Hi, everybody. Welcome to our latest episode of Let's Be Direct. This is a LaneAxis podcast in which we examine all things trucking, supply chain, and the future of the industry, which, as we always say, is going direct. I'm Andrew Rivera, head of marketing for LaneAxis, joined again, as always, by LaneAxis founder and CEO Rick Burnett. And there's only one topic to discuss right now, Rick, just dominating trucking. And actually, this topic has gone beyond trucking to mainstream media, and that is the collapse of yellow trucking, right? They were about to celebrate their 100th birthday, and obviously it's going to be an unhappy birthday because this collapse has really been stunning. It's going to be the largest trucking company collapse in U.S. history. Now, just to put this into some context for those who haven't been following closely, first of all, it's important to point out that yellow was struggling before the pandemic, okay? They had come close to filing for bankruptcy before the pandemic a couple of times, all right? But when the pandemic hit, they requested a loan from the government, a bailout loan essentially of 700 million plus. That was pushed by the White House at the time, which determined that yellow was too important in terms of national defense. So that was the premise of that 700 million plus bailout. The Defense Department actually disagreed with that, and then there were accusations and lawsuits flying back and forth. We can dive into the weeds of this as we continue this conversation, Rick. But look, this is a tough nut to crack. So let me just get your general thoughts on what's going on.
Well, I mean, it's bad, obviously, for the Yellow Freight was a longtime player in this industry, and it's bad for the people that work there, and it's bad for the customers that they service, and it's bad for the industry as far as an overall look into it. Quite frankly, I think it bodes well to what LaneAxis Direct Network is because when you put yourself in a position where you're buying annual contracted rates and you're locking up capacity into something, and then which you're doing it with less than 3% of the total market, 97% of the market is smaller independent. You're putting yourself at mercy to these larger carriers that, quite frankly, this is a management issue of the company. It's not an opportunity of and a gauge of the overall industry. It is, a mismanagement of, and this has gone on for years. So I'm not talking about who's managing, and that's not my point. But you can read through public information out there that they've been struggling for a long time, and Yellow Freight, hasn't adjusted their management to, move into an operationally better run company, and so, and that really is pointed toward a $700 million bailout plus. I mean, what are you doing with that kind of money? And, because operationally, freight was moving. And the pandemic affected a lot of sectors that were shut down. Freight was interrupted, but the freight demand actually spiked. And so, there will be a lot more than this conversation going into the look of exactly what happened.
So, you mentioned the 700 million plus that they got in COVID relief. That actually represents really just half of what their overall debt was as of a couple of months ago. They were $1.5 billion in debt. And, the Teamsters Union, which really sort of spurred on, the negative press and the negative perception of Yellow, agreed that it was gross mismanagement of the company, and they have no one to blame but themselves. So, I guess my question is this symptomatic of a bigger problem in the industry? We saw UPS almost go on strike. The Teamsters working for UPS, another 30,000 union strong members almost go on strike, narrowly averted. Is this a sign of bigger problems, especially with mega carriers, or is this just a one-off?
I mean, it's probably pointing towards something. And, I think comparing union and mega carriers to the overall representation of the transportation market is unfair, because 97% of this industry, relies on themselves to make their living. That relies on themselves, and they've taken the risk. These 97% have gone out and they've gotten funding for themselves. They bought a truck, they bought a trailer, they buy insurance, they pay. And so to push, from an overall number of trucking units, a smaller percentage, which is 3% that represent the overall market, it's unfair to the independent guys who run good operations. And actually, the irony in all this is that, large shippers and, said, well, I don't want to deal with independents for various different reasons. And, here they are dealing with a mega carrier that's gone bankrupt now. And now, they're hurting. That hasn't been finalized yet, but, it's suspected that they will. Point is that the business has been erupted from the shipper standpoint. And they're, a fire sale to find carriers to fulfill their demands of their product being moved, because them trucks aren't moving today. And so, realizing this is really, highlights the point of really looking at the overall transportation industry and what is missing and what corrects this type of exposure to the market. And what corrects it is a network where you have visibility to contract and build an unlimited amount of contractual relationships with the 97%, so that if something like this happens in your annual contract rate or in your demand carriers that you have today, and that fulfillment isn't met, you have an ability to immediately shift and navigate the waters by going to a network that you got visibility and ability to move your product to.
So let's, in that vein, let's talk about how this affects independents. So Yellow was moving about 17.5 million shipments per year. That's a lot. And Yellow was also actually prominently featured, in the multiple reports we've done on purchase transportation. Now they were actually on the low end of their spend on purchase transportation. They had revenues last year of over $5 billion, but of that they spent about 15% of their revenues on purchase transportation. Now, what I've read is that other mega carriers are going to benefit, specifically Old Dominion and XPO are the names I've heard, from being able to pick up those 17.5 million annual shipments. I would think this is also a great opportunity. There's an opportunity here for the independent 97% to start making themselves known as a viable option. Yes, via the LaneAxis network, I think. Let me leave it there. Do you agree? Is there an opportunity here for independents?
Well, I think the opportunity is for these companies that are picking up the capacity of the freight, of the loads. And I think, if we could have a crystal ball and we would look down the corridors of times in the next year or two, what you're going to find is that I don't think they're going to push rate increases to the independent carriers. I think what it's going to allow them to do is increase the rates to these shippers that they know are in dire need. And now they're subjected to paying rates that are going to be higher, right? Because they got to get their product moved, and they know that they have to get their product moved, and they know they're in a dire strait. And so they're going to increase the rates. Well, do you think them rate increases are going to be pushed down to the independent guys? Probably not, because it never does. Right. And so what you're gonna look back on is a time when they've come in and threw them a lifeboat, to rescue them, but at a cost, because they've subjected themselves to large contractual relationships that, 15% of your overall loads, if you take that amount, is substantial. They have 49,000 loads a day. Well, I mean, is 7,000+ loads a day being subcontracted out? Probably, and based on the math and the numbers that they report. So if you look at that number, then really they already have over 7,000 independent carriers and that's a day. In a month's basis, they probably have a network of tens of thousands of independent carriers that are picking up and moving their freight every day. So if they had an ability to just shift, and the carriers that are currently moving their freight, they just are able to go direct, that solves that issue. And effectively, they could probably get it for or less than what they're paying today to Yellow Freight, because Yellow Freight wasn't doing that business for free. It was a double brokered load. It was a load that came to them and they subcontracted out the independent. So, by definition, that's a double brokered load. Even though it's masked under the term purchase transportation, and if somebody hasn't followed us, but they're just picking this podcast up, purchase transportation is what they report as an annual contracted rate, but they subcontract it out for various different reasons. But all those carriers go into contracts that exceed their current capacity on a day-to-day basis. So they're going into it knowing they're going to subcontract it out.
And let's call purchase transportation what it really is. It's a legalized form of double brokering. So, let me ask you about where the brokers maybe fit into this scenario. Is this putting a smile on brokers' faces because there's more opportunity out there? I mean, you're right that the freight rates have already gone up. Now, whether the small and independent guys are going to see that increase, as you said, it remains to be seen. I think it's unlikely. If that UPS strike had happened, boy, freight rates really would have shot up and capacity really would have tightened, I think. Where are freight brokers at with this? What do you think?
Well, one point is double brokering isn't illegal. It's frowned upon. So I want to clear that up. Yeah. But as far as where brokers stand on this, again, it's going to be an opportunity because they got to find carriers. Ultimately, the fundamental part of transportation is really simple. Somebody needs to move product and they need a trucking company to move that product. That's it. There's a lot of clutter in between that sentence that, quite frankly, in today's environment with technology can be removed. And that's what the system does. But fundamentally, we're just talking about, so what's happened is that, yes, they're going to be at the mercy of how do I find these carriers? Because what our mission is to build the network of the 3+ million drivers that work for these independent companies that nobody knows where they're at. And it's a manual process to identify them and to contract and everything else and fulfill it. And so the opportunity here is really to bring the awareness that there's never been a need greater than today to build a network that have visibility into the actual trucks, because the trucks are what move the freight. So what you're talking about is how do they find them and how do they negotiate and how they confirm and how do they pay those trucks to move that freight. And so this is just going to be an opportunity, because now perceptually all these shippers are like, oh, the demand, the capacity has shrunk. It hadn't shrunk. Their 49,000 loads were down to 10 or 15,000 loads a day. And with technology, one thing you could solve it with is eliminating the million trucks moving empty every day, right? With visibility and efficiency. So there has to be a paradigm shift in the supply chain experts to start to realize that the industry that moves this freight is independent, and the link that's missing is visibility into that. And so you're going to see a lot of different things in the months to come in opportunity that, will take advantage of this situation.
Now, what does complicate things is that, the freight market is really down. Some analysts say it's as bad as they've seen in years. Right
Down
now,
from what perspective?
well, down as far as shippers needing capacity, because shippers stockpiled a lot of their goods. They stopped just in time sort of strategies, and really overstocked their warehouses.
Well, some of that has to do with the economy, the status of where, in the last, I would say 12, 15, 18 months, people have been tight with their wallet because they were nervous of the overall things that were going on. Now, some of that has lightened, and you're seeing the markets turn around, and you're seeing people, and so I think, yes, there has been a shrinkage of freight because there isn't a product demand that there, but you're getting ready to bump up into Christmas here, and 3 or 4 months, you're going to start seeing that freight come in off them. If it's October, it's August, yeah. So next 60 days or sooner, that them loads are coming in for Christmas. Sure. And so again, you're going to be at the time when capacity, shrinks because the demand spikes. So are they going to be able to organize this chaos from this that will fulfill that stuff? Because LTL is a big part of Christmas. You have all these less than truckload movements that are consolidated. And so, they're going to be, so that, this is going to be an opportunity for LTLs in the next 6 months that they're going to take advantage of. And I'm not saying that's a bad comment. I'm not saying take advantage of it in the wrong way. I'm just saying that it's an opportunity for them to, that's going to come up, and that's business.
And obviously, the economy is intertwined with trucking, completely. And one analyst said that truckers are getting paid less than half of what they were getting paid at the peak of the COVID pandemic in 2021. And he said that he's never seen freight demand fall this far, this fast. And consumers are also spending less on goods and more on services. So, the economy is intertwined with all of this, and it just, I think it makes it difficult. Obviously the peak season coming up will sort of settle a lot of things, like you said. But the intermingling of the economy with capacity and all this just seems like it makes it hard to forecast where the industry is going to go.
Well, and on the data stuff that's reported, and we challenge that a lot, and I just like to see the source of the data. Where are you getting it? Where's it coming from? And what are you reporting? If you're looking at shippers' rates, are you reporting what the shipper's paying, or are you reporting what the carrier's getting? Because the difference in that number is a management fee. And what part of that are you reporting? Because the freight rates isn't really what a shipper's paying. Freight rate is what the carrier's getting. The difference is the middle. And so, when you're talking about data and you're talking about these different, challenges of the volume, they use these, ebb and flows of numbers too, because there's no source of verification that comes, because a lot of this product isn't on the actual truck, right? From the data reporting standpoint, it is being input. And what input verification is there on what's being reported? Because if you don't have a network, you don't have true visibility into data. You're analyzing stuff that somebody's putting in. Well, is that accurate or not?
Right. I mean, a lot of this is anecdotal. One driver said that, the runs that were earning him $6,000 or $7,000 a couple of years ago are now paying less than $4,000. Now that's one guy, but you have to, not necessarily assume, but you can make some assumptions that a lot of his colleagues are experiencing the same thing. Now, this particular guy, he's an one truck owner operator, and he says he's shutting down because the rates have gone down just too far, too fast. I want to shift the topic to the role of unions in this. The word union has been in the news so much lately. I think everyone's aware of what's going on in Hollywood with the writers and the actors. Deregulation happened in 1980, and a lot of that was because truckers didn't want to be in unions. Today, the unions, I think there's a lot of mixed feelings about unions within trucking, honestly. The UPS drivers can probably thank their union for getting them a really solid contract. Now, the yellow drivers, I'm not sure how they feel. I think, yellow was going to collapse whether they supported them or not, probably, because of the mismanagement. What are your thoughts about the sort of resurgence, if you want to call it that, of unions in trucking?
I mean, I don't personally see it happening. I mean, just based on, what the market is today. Because if you think about it, the 1.5 million, 2 million, licensed DOT carriers that are independent. And that data comes from the DOT because we poll it. So it's, you'll see all kinds of ranges of the number of independent carriers. Whether it's 800,000 or 1.5 million or whatever, it's a substantial number. That's the point. And those guys have a choice because they're drivers. They have a commercial driver's license to drive a truck. So they knowingly make a decision that I work for this independent instead of working for a union. They're already making that decision. So if 97% of this industry is already making the decision, do you think that there's going to be this big revelation that we could join a union? No, it's been around. It's that in these unionized type of organizations, they have a purpose, they have a value, right? And when you go there, you understand what that is. And that's why you go work there, if you can get an opportunity to work there and get the job, right? If you are an independent, you know what that is. And you're driving for an independent for those personal reasons that you have that are different from the guy that works for the union. Because the guy that's independent is driving for an independent company for a reason. If he's an owner-operator, he's doing that for a reason. He took the risk for a reason. And odds are is that those guys aren't going to all of a sudden go, oh man, I didn't know there was a union out there. I could start driving for a union. They're not going to do that. Why? Because they drive for the trucking company or an independent because they want their freedom. They want their independence. Now, they want fair opportunities that they're not getting. And fair opportunities come from them having an ability to connect with somebody that controls their destiny. That's the people that have the freight, because that's where the money is. The money in trucking is in the freight. Visibility provides you more efficiency and opportunity by adding shippers that you can go direct on. But the freight rates come from the shipper because they're the one paying the check. They're the one writing the check. They're the one that pay the freight rates, right? So when you remove all the clutter, then you can actually see through what it actually is. I'll just make a statement. This thing will never go to a unionized transportation network. It's just not going to, because it's not now. And it's not like it's 50-50. I mean, it is 97%.
Right.
I mean, it is so far over here that moving this over to, a 60-40 is a paradigm shift of magnitude to the overall. That would mean somebody's going to basically roll out a 500,000 truck organization. Why hasn't it been done yet?
No.
There's plenty of capital out there.
Right.
Why hasn't it been done yet?
Too risky and too much money.
Well, I mean, you run into the long lines of what the conversation, they got 12,000 trucks. They don't have 500,000. They got 12,000, right? So that's just, in my opinion, this is my opinion. But my opinion is that'll never happen. That'll just never happen.
Now, one thing we have preached often is that there's strength and power in numbers. Now, some people will look at a union as saying that's their function. Now, LaneAxis, one of our, I believe, appealing aspects is power in numbers, right? With big numbers, we're able to give independents, fuel discounts, insurance discounts, on and on. But LaneAxis is not a union. We don't lobby. Let me have you, sort of describe why LaneAxis is not a union, but it is still very much a network focused on coalescing all these independent drivers together to show strength in numbers. But that doesn't make it a union.
Well,
that doesn't make us a union.
No, well, a union is they have leaderships and they have people making decisions on their behalf. This is a consolidation of the 97% that can utilize the consolidation for buying power. And that buying power is a network and a marketplace. And so when they realize that the power's in the numbers, and the more and more that they come to a network, and the more and more shippers that realize that, oh, look, I don't want to be subjective to a yellow freight type of an example where I have a contract, but I don't have a carrier to move my freight now because they're out of business. So what was the contract worth? Nothing, because your freight's not moved now, right? So you're buying an annual contract and buying capacity for something that you may not have in, a month or 2 months or 6 months or whatever, right? Because the company goes out of business. Well, what's the contract do for you? Nothing. It means nothing. So you're subjecting yourself to positions in the safety net of this 3% when 97% of this industry is moving the product every day. And until upper managements and C-level guys with shippers start to realize this, they're going to continue pushing this to an operation. And operation guys are going to do annual contracted rates with the carriers, with the big three, and then they're going to continue this purchase transportation and subcontract out because they're not incentivized by this. If the C-level guys realize that, oh man, this is massive amount of cost, and there's ability to do it differently, and I can build an on-demand network so that I'm never at anybody's mercy for capacity constraints. I can go to the 97%, and I can control that my private network, if you will, in a public environment to where you basically can go to and increase the number of carriers whenever you want, right? And you already have an established network of independent carriers right now, because 7,000 plus loads of yellow freight, independent guys were hauling freight for them. So if they knew that and had the DOTs, they could port them over into a system and they could immediately say, hey, here's an opportunity for you. You can get this freight. They wouldn't have had to go to somebody else immediately, and whoever else I know who it is, but I don't want to state them, but they wouldn't have had to do that. They could have gone directly with the system to carriers that were already hauling their freight. They really have a relationship with those guys anyway, currently today, because they're hauling their freight. They don't know who they are. They don't go direct. So, at some point in time here in the near future, the revelation of what is needed in this industry is going to be glaring, because, these things that fundamentally, what are we talking about in this conversation? We're talking about the two people that are involved in this business transaction coming directly together, and that's it.
So you've talked in the past about, terms like full truckload, LTL, parcel are probably going to be extinct and fall under the umbrella of just pure network visibility. Do you think now is this collapse of yellow sort of an opportunity to highlight, that?
Well, it's just, again, where I see technology moving the industry to efficiency. Because if you provide a network and you provide a visibility into the network, what you know from intelligent data, what the network will be able to do with the data that's in there is make moves more efficient with data and information. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that right now we sit here and there's trucks moving all over that are half full, that are truckload. And there is LTL movements that's in the way that if they had in their path, that if they had visibility to and ability to immediately contract with and pick it up, that could add additional revenue on the back of that truck, or today it's going empty. And so building a network and visibility into it is going to start to reduce the number of inefficient moves. It will expose truckload carriers into LTL movements that today they don't have visibility into. That it's just two pallets, right? It's just freight. And there's open space. And so utilizing capacity movements of network visibility through intelligent data is why I think major shippers are going to start realizing, hey, we should actually come together and we should actually build a network. Because if we build a network, see, Walmart's got 8,000 trucks, but they have deadhead moves every day on their truck movements. So they're trying to find freight, right? And so by building a network, not only are they going to, capitalize on the network that's hauling their freight every day, but their private fleet is going to have access to. So the consolidation of truck movements into a single network that provides visibility has massive amounts of positive impact to the economy in itself. Reduction of cost, reduction of wear and tear on roads, reduction of traffic flow, inefficient movements, emissions. It's a green initiative, everything. Because you have all these inefficiencies that, quite frankly, a system can correct today.
So I'll end on this question as we start to wrap up. So, we've talked a lot about in the past how a direct network is really a paradigm shift and a mindset shift for shippers. With all the chaos going on right now, do you think is now the time when that mindset shift is finally starting to take root?
Probably not. Because they're going to feel this pain. It's going to take a minute. And they're going to feel this cost. And as, this onion starts to peel down, right, to the core of what actually happened, that's going to take months. And it'll probably be next year before they've had time to analyze the situation. They've seen what's happened. They've felt the impact in the form of a cost. And they probably experienced that they now have some independent carriers under contract that's doing the work that they now know because they needed to. Various different things. But eventually, yes, they're going to find out. And they're going to realize that, the core of this whole conversation is about getting real-time information, real-time access, and real-time connectivity to my business partner, which is the trucking company. And whether he's got one truck or whether he's got 10 trucks or whether he's got 10,000 trucks. Ultimately, when that product picked up, what is it? It's one driver picking up the load and he's delivering the load. That's it. And if he's got an owner operator, I would trust the guy that's bought the truck and the trailer and invested his livelihood in it before I would anybody else, because he has more invested. That's why I like the model. That's why we built the system, is because we're trying to give the people that's actually doing the work connected to the people that they're hauling the freight for, and then bring efficiency through all that process.
All right. Well, it's quite a topic. Probably still to be continued. We'll see what happens over the next few months. But yeah, this collapse is really, I don't know. I think it's a watershed moment for the industry. We'll see. So thank you again for joining us for this latest episode of Let's Be Direct. Stay safe out there on the roads, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.